Prayer is hard enough, but this week's lesson is about something even harder for many of us to talk about: faith. By Friday morning, many of us are still trying to remember what the lesson was actually saying. So here is the deal. 15 minutes from now we will know the memory verse, the 3 encounters that show what real faith looks like, the long line of Hebrews 11 heroes, the night in Gethsemane that showed us the faith of Jesus, and the takeaway we can carry into Sabbath school class today. Lesson 8 is called Having Faith. The memory verse is Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. The whole week walks one big idea. Faith is not something we manufacture. It is the foundation we stand on. Let's walk it. Hold the memory verse. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 gives us the Bible's clearest definition of faith. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. The Greek word behind substance is hypostasis. It carries the idea of what stands under something, a foundation. Picture the image Jesus himself gave in Matthew chapter 7. The wise man builds his house on the rock. Notice what Jesus did not say. He did not say the wise man becomes the rock. He did not say the wise man makes the rock. He said the wise man builds on the rock. The rock was already there. That is the lesson's big idea. Faith is not us generating strength from inside ourselves. Faith is placing the weight of our life on the one who can hold it. Hold that. Every story in this recap comes back to that one picture. Sunday's reading is called Just Give Me a Sign. Mark chapter 8, verses 11 and 12. The Pharisees come to Jesus demanding a sign from heaven. Proof on demand. Something dramatic enough to remove the need for trust. But Jesus had just fed 4,000 people from 7 loaves. Before that, 5,000 from 5. They had seen healings, deliverance, teaching that left crowds speechless. The problem was not that God had given too little evidence. The lesson connects this to Deuteronomy chapter 4, where Moses warned Israel not to forget what their own eyes had seen. Sea split open, bread from the sky, water from a rock, fire on a mountain. And still they asked, is the Lord among us or not? That is Sunday's warning. Sometimes the issue is not that we need a new sign. Sometimes we need to remember the signs God already gave. Monday's reading is called Jesus Sees Our Faith. The point underneath the title matters. Jesus sees what is actually there, not what we present. He can tell whether our faith is large or small, desperate or settled, broken or whole, and what he sees is what he responds to. The reading gives us 3 encounters that teach us what real faith looks like in 3 different sizes. 3 people from 3 different worlds with 3 different kinds of need. None of them came with polished theology. All 3 brought what they had. Let's walk them. The first encounter is Matthew chapter 15. A Canaanite woman. To feel the weight of who she is, remember the Canaanites were the ancient adversaries of Israel. Wrong ethnicity, wrong religion, wrong centuries of history between her people and the people of God. Her daughter is tormented by a demon. She has run out of options. So she comes to a Jewish teacher she has no business approaching. She cries out, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David." Then Jesus says nothing. Silence. The disciples want her sent away. Jesus finally says, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." That sounds like a no. She kneels. "Lord, help me." 3 words. Then Jesus says something that has unsettled readers for centuries about not throwing children's bread to the dogs. But she hears the opening inside the image and answers, "Yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." She is saying, even the smallest mercy from your table is enough for my daughter. And Jesus says words he uses for only 2 people in the 4 Gospels. Great is your faith. Not Peter, not John, not any of the 12. A Canaanite mother who would not take silence as the final answer. The second encounter is Luke chapter 7. A Roman centurion. A pagan soldier in occupying Roman uniform, the visible symbol of the empire that held Israel under its heel. And yet Luke tells us he loved the Jewish nation and had built their synagogue with his own money. His servant is dying. He sends Jewish elders to ask Jesus for help. But before Jesus arrives, the centurion sends friends with a message that stops Jesus in his tracks. "Lord, do not trouble yourself. I am not worthy that you should come under my roof. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man placed under authority." Listen to that. Under authority. He understood that his ability to command soldiers came from the chain of command above him. The general did not have to come to the barracks. The word was enough. And the centurion saw the same authority in Jesus. Only the authority reached all the way to heaven. Jesus marveled. He turned to the crowd and said, I have not found such great faith. Not even in Israel, the second great faith moment in the Gospels. And again, it comes from an outsider. The third encounter is Mark chapter 9, verse 24. A father whose son has been possessed since childhood. The Spirit has thrown the boy into fire and water trying to destroy him. The disciples tried to help and failed. The father is exhausted. He brings the boy to Jesus and says, if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Jesus picks up the phrase, if you can believe, all things are possible, and the Father gives us one of the most honest prayers in the entire New Testament. He cries out with tears, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Faith and doubt in one sentence. Not I believe, not I don't believe, both at the same time. And Jesus does not require him to clean up the doubt first. He casts out the spirit. He heals the boy. He works with the tangled mess of belief and unbelief the Father brought him. Jesus does not need our faith to be polished. He needs it to be pointed at him. Tuesday's reading carries one of the most important sentences in the whole week. Faith is not a feeling. Most of us have been measuring our faith by how the worship hit us or whether the prayer came easily this morning. The lesson asks us to be precise. Feelings are like weather. They change by the hour. Faith is the climate underneath the weather. The climate does not change because it rained today. And our faith does not vanish because the feeling went quiet this morning. The lesson reminds us that even mustard seed-sized faith moves mountains. Matthew 17, verse 20. Size does not matter, direction does. And how does faith grow? Romans 10, verse 17. Faith comes by hearing the word of God. Fed regularly, it grows. Ephesians 2, verse 8 says faith is itself a gift. We do not manufacture it from within ourselves. We receive what God has already given. Wednesday walks us into Hebrews chapter 11, the faith chapter. Person after person who lived on the foundation faith provides. Abel offered a better sacrifice, the heart, not the gift. Enoch walked with God for 3 centuries until the walk took him home. Noah built an ark in a dry land before the first drop of rain had fallen, moved with godly fear. Abraham left his city without knowing where he was going, because the one who told him to go was trustworthy. Sarah laughed when the promise came, but she believed. She judged God faithful, not the circumstances. Moses refused the palace and chose suffering with God's people, esteeming an invisible reward as greater than visible Egyptian gold. Rahab the prostitute in Jericho bet her life on a God she had only heard rumors about, and her name shows up in the genealogy of Jesus. And the chapter says this. Hebrews 11, verse 13. These all died in faith, not having received the promises. They spent their lives standing on the strength of a promise they never held. And the writer of Hebrews does not call that failure. He calls it faith. Because faith is not getting the thing. It is trusting the one who promised it. Thursday's reading takes us to a phrase that has shaped Adventist theology for over a century. Revelation chapter 14, verse 12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Notice the exact phrasing. Not faith in Jesus, though that is included. The faith of Jesus. The faith he himself exercised. The clearest window into that faith is Gethsemane. Matthew chapter 26. The night before the cross. Jesus falls on his face. Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. 3 times he asks for a different path. 3 times he surrenders. Sweat falling like drops of blood. That is the ultimate definition of faith. Not the absence of dread. The decision to trust the Father's plan when everything inside is screaming to run. And Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2 tells us this same faith is given to us. Jesus is the author and the finisher of our faith. He started it. He will complete it. The pressure is off. We are not holding ourselves up. We are being held. Now bring it home. The 3 encounters gave us 3 faces of faith. Desperate, in the Canaanite woman who would not leave. Clear-eyed, in the centurion who understood authority. Broken but pointed, in the father who said, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Which one feels closest to where we are this week? Are we pressing enough to silence? Are we learning to trust one word from the right person? Are we bringing a faith that is half belief and half tears? Bring that faith to Jesus anyway. A weak faith aimed at Jesus is stronger than a confident faith aimed at ourselves. That is Sabbath School Lesson 8 in 15 minutes. If we want the full deep dive walkthrough, the Greek word slowly, the Hebrews 11 heroes one at a time, Gethsemane in full, the complete Lesson 8 study is linked in the description. Subscribe to the Verse Atlas for next week's Lesson 9 recap on sin, the Gospel, and the Law. Drop a comment below. Which of the three faces of faith feels closest this week? God bless your Sabbath.